They say Rockefeller built his empire on oil. They are mistaken. His true fortune was forged not in the earth, but in the first 90 seconds of his day. This is not a secret about money. It is the algorithm for victory, hidden in the discipline of a single, deliberate thought. Humanity mistakenly seeks victory on external battlefields, in the marketplace, against competitors, and amidst the chaos of circumstance. This is a profoundly misguided and futile endeavor. For the only war that truly matters is fought, and won in the silent theater of the mind, long before the sun itself has risen. The outcomes you experience are but echoes of this internal struggle, a shadow cast by the light or darkness you cultivate within yourself. The pursuit of external control without internal mastery is the definition of insanity, a recipe for perpetual reaction and servitude to the whims of the world. There exists a primary reality, which is the domain of your thoughts, and a secondary reality, which is the world you perceive. The common man is a slave to the secondary, reacting to its every stimulus. The Titan, however, understands that mastery of the primary reality dictates the terms upon which the secondary reality must unfold. He does not react to the world. He impresses his will upon it, shaping it from the inside out. This is the fundamental distinction between a life of consequence and a life of coincidence, between being a creator of your destiny and a mere spectator to it. Consider the great Stoic emperor, Marcus Aurelius, who governed an empire by first governing his own mind each morning. This inner calm amidst external chaos was not a passive trait of his personality. It was an actively cultivated and non-negotiable strategy. He understood that the most crucial empire to rule was the one that existed between his own ears. This principle is timeless, a law of power that predates and will outlast every transient kingdom and fortune built on sand. The order within creates the capacity for order without, a truth the ambitious often ignore at their peril. The fundamental error of modern ambition lies in its obsession with external tools, with tactics, applications, and fleeting hacks, while completely neglecting the calibration of the primary instrument, consciousness itself. This is akin to a swordsman who spends his entire life sharpening his blade, polishing its steel, and admiring its edge, but never once trains the hand that wields it. A perfect tool in the hands of an undisciplined user is not only useless, it is a liability. The power is never in the tool. It is always in the master who commands it. You must understand that Rockefeller did not merely outcompete his rivals. He operated from a mental framework that rendered their actions predictable, their panics exploitable, and their strategies ultimately irrelevant. He was not playing the same game. While they wrestled with the chaotic variables of the market, he focused on the one constant he could control absolutely, the state and direction of his own mind. He built an internal system so robust that the external world had no choice but to conform to its logic and its unyielding structure. This is the promise of what is to come. We will not be discussing financial instruments or market strategies. Instead, we will dissect the precise architecture of the mind, the simple, repeatable ritual that served as the bedrock for a dynasty. You will be given the blueprint to construct this internal fortress for yourself. It is a process that requires not hours of meditation, but 90 seconds of ruthless, disciplined clarity. This is the mechanism that separates the master from the masses. To understand the method, you must first understand the man, but not as the world saw him. Do not picture a magnate or a tycoon. Picture an architect. John D. Rockefeller's obsession with order, with efficiency, and most famously, with his personal ledgers, was not merely a practice of accounting. It was the external manifestation of his internal philosophy. He was an architect of systems, and the first and most important system he perfected was his own mind. His empire of oil was merely a byproduct of his empire of thought, a physical reflection of an invisible design. The philosophy behind his famous ledgers, where every single cent was meticulously tracked, was not born of avarice. It was an exercise in absolute, unyielding discipline. He grasped a profound truth: that which is not measured cannot be managed, and that which cannot be managed cannot be mastered. This principle applied to every penny that flowed through his hands, but more importantly, it applied to every thought that flowed through his mind. His financial accounting was simply a training ground for a much deeper, much more significant form of accounting. Long before he balanced the books of Standard Oil, Rockefeller balanced the ledger of his own mind with the same relentless and impartial precision. He audited his thoughts, his emotions, and his intentions with the cold, hard logic of a master accountant. He identified mental liabilities: fear, doubt, greed, and assets, clarity, focus, resolvent. He ensured that the balance always, invariably, favored the assets. His external empire was simply the result of an impeccably managed internal balance sheet, a testament to his mental solvency. This practice explains his legendary composure, his unnerving serenity in the face of financial panics and industrial crises that drove other men to ruin. This was not an absence of emotion. It was the result of a daily mental rehearsal, a strategic pre-engagement with every conceivable contingency. In the quiet solitude of his mind, he had already faced the worst possible outcomes, analyzed them, and formulated his response. When crisis finally struck in the real world, he was not reacting. He was merely executing a pre-approved plan from his mental ledger. Even his vast, world-shaping philanthropy was not an emotional act of charity. It was the logical extension of this architect's mindset. He saw societal problems as systemic inefficiencies, and he applied his capital and intellect to re-engineer those systems for a better, more orderly outcome. He was not merely accumulating wealth, he was executing a grand multi-generational plan that was first blueprinted and refined through decades of focused strategic thought. Every action was deliberate, a consequence of his internal design. Let us therefore adopt his central metaphor. The 90-second ritual we are about to explore is the practice of opening, auditing, and balancing your own mental ledger. It is the daily act of accounting for your most valuable resource, your own consciousness. It is a moment of pure executive function, where you cease to be a passive observer of your thoughts and become the active chief financial officer of your mind, ensuring its profitability and solvency before the day's trading can even begin. This ritual is not a form of passive meditation. It is an active, strategic audit. It is ruthlessly efficient and is divided into 3 distinct, 30-second phases. The first is an inventory of your assets. The second is an honest assessment of your liabilities. And the third, and most critical, is the establishment of the day's order. Each phase is a rapid, focused, and decisive mental action, designed to bring your entire being into a state of formidable alignment before you engage with the external world. There is no ambiguity, only clarity. The first 30 seconds are dedicated to assets. This is a swift but comprehensive mental scan of the resources at your immediate command. You will acknowledge your clarity of thought, your physical energy, the specific knowledge you have acquired that is relevant to the day, the strategic relationships you can leverage, and the nascent opportunities that lie on the horizon. The purpose of this phase is not arrogance, but a grounded recognition of the power you already possess. It is to begin the day from a position of strength, not deficit. The next 30 seconds are for inspecting your liabilities. This requires absolute, dispassionate honesty. You will look directly at your potential vulnerabilities for the day, the creeping doubts, the predictable distractions, the unresolved tasks that drain your mental energy, the imminent risks in your path, and the personal weaknesses that could be exploited. The goal here is not self-judgment or anxiety, but pure, unvarnished awareness. To see a liability clearly is to strip it of its power to surprise you. You are naming your ghosts so they cannot haunt you. The final 30 seconds are dedicated to declaring the day's order. Based on your clear-eyed view of your assets and liabilities, you will identify and commit to the single most important action for the day. This is the one thing that, if accomplished, will create the most significant positive momentum, the action that serves as the keystone to your arch. This is the application of the principle of leverage to your time and energy. It is not a to-do list. It is a declaration of your primary intent, the one move that matters most. With daily practice, this entire 90-second process becomes less of a conscious, deliberate sequence and more of a single, fluid, intuitive act. It becomes a reflexive strategic snapshot of your inner and outer landscape, taken at the moment of highest leverage, the very beginning of the day. This snapshot does not just inform your day, it fundamentally defines its trajectory. It is the act of setting your own internal compass before you step into the wild, unpredictable territory of the world. Understand that this ritual is not primarily an act of planning, it is an act of alignment. Planning deals with the external sequence of events, but alignment deals with the internal coherence of your own power. It is the process of pointing your intention, your focus, and your energy in a single, unified direction before the chaotic forces of the external world can begin their daily attempt to scatter them. This alignment is the source of all true personal power. It is the foundation upon which all great works are built. The modern world wages a relentless war for a single territory or attention. Distraction is no longer an annoyance. It is the default state of being for the undisciplined mind. It is a tax imposed upon the unfocused, and it is a tax that compounds daily, robbing you of your life's potential. The first pillar of the mental ledger method is the construction of an unbreachable shield against this onslaught. It is the forging of absolute sovereignty over your own focus, the most valuable currency you possess. The 90-second ritual is a daily training exercise for your mind's executive function. By forcing yourself to identify and declare the day's order, you are teaching your brain to distinguish, with lightning speed, between the merely urgent and the truly important. That single, declared intention acts as an internal compass for the remainder of the day, a silent guide that helps you navigate the endless sea of noise and requests. It allows you to say no with conviction, not out of negativity, but out of allegiance to a higher priority. Consider Rockefeller's infamous obsession with implacable efficiency. He was a man who waged war on waste in his refineries, capturing every byproduct and turning it into a source of profit. This same mindset must be applied to your mental energy. The mental ledger method is a system for eliminating the waste of scattered thought and unfocused effort. It ensures that every quantum of your mental and emotional capital is invested wisely, directed toward the one objective that yields the greatest return. The undisciplined mind is like a bare light bulb, scattering its energy in every direction, illuminating nothing with any real intensity. The mind trained by this daily ritual becomes a laser, It gathers the same amount of energy but focuses it into a coherent single point of such intensity that it can cut through steel. Your daily declaration of the day's order is the act of focusing that beam. It is the decision to burn through one significant obstacle rather than dimly lighting 100 trivialities. Each morning that you complete this ritual, you are carving new neural pathways in your brain. You are physically reinforcing the mental muscles of discipline, discernment, and deliberate action. It becomes progressively easier to ignore the trivial, to resist the pull of distraction, and to remain locked onto your most important objective. What begins as a difficult act of will eventually becomes an automatic, ingrained habit. You are not just managing your focus. You are fundamentally re-engineering the very hardware of your mind. The capacity to maintain unwavering focus on a single worthy goal in the face of relentless, incoming chaos is not a gift bestowed upon a chosen few. It is a skill, and like any skill, it is built through consistent, deliberate practice. This is the first great victory that the mental ledger guarantees you each and every morning. You win the war for your focus before most people have even woken up to the battle, securing the high ground from which all other victories of the day will follow. Emotional volatility is the single greatest liability for any leader, creator, or strategist. Fear, greed, euphoria, and panic are ruinous advisors. They cloud judgment, corrupt logic, and force catastrophic short-sighted decisions. Rockefeller's legendary calmness was perceived by his rivals as a lack of emotion, but it was in fact a supreme form of emotional mastery. The second pillar of the mental ledger is the cultivation of this profound state of emotional immunity, transforming volatile feelings into harmless data. The 30-second phase of auditing your liabilities is a powerful exercise in emotional anticipation and disarmament. By consciously looking for your fears and anxieties in a controlled, private mental environment, you rob them of their power to ambush you later in the day. You acknowledge their presence without granting them authority. You see them, name them, and categorize them as data points on your ledger, not as directors of your strategy. You are domesticating your own internal beasts. This pillar is not about the suppression of emotion. Suppression is a fragile and ultimately doomed strategy. This is about observation. It is about creating a space between stimulus and response. An emotion arises: fear of failure, anxiety about a meeting, and the untrained mind becomes that emotion. The trained mind observes it, notes it in the ledger, and asks, what information is this emotion providing me? The feeling is transformed from a master into a messenger, from a tyrant into a simple Through this daily practice, you build an unshakable core of psychological resilience. The market plummets, a competitor makes an aggressive move, a key project fails. To the mind trained by the daily audit, these are not personal catastrophes. They are merely new entries to be logged in the ledger. They are new data points that will inform the next day's order. The practice strips external events of their power to dictate your internal state, granting you the freedom to act with pure strategic reason. This state of calm is a devastatingly effective strategic weapon. In any negotiation, any crisis, any high-stakes environment, the individual who remains in control of their own emotional state invariably controls the entire room, while others are swept away by the tides of panic and greed. You remain a stone in the river, observing the currents and choosing your moment to act with decisive precision. This profound stillness is not a gift. It is forged in the silent, daily furnace of those 90 seconds. True freedom is not the absence of problems. The world will always provide a steady supply of chaos and crisis. True freedom is the ability to remain internally undisturbed and sovereign at the very center of the storm. It is the power to operate from a place of deep, internal stability, regardless of the instability of the external world. This is the emotional immunity that the ritual confers, a peace that is not contingent on circumstances, but is generated, reliably and powerfully, from within. The majority of people are conditioned to see problems. They see obstacles, setbacks, and crises. The mind trained by the daily audit of the mental ledger, however, learns to see something else entirely. It sees inefficiencies and imbalances in the system, and it understands a fundamental law of nature and commerce. Every imbalance represents a hidden opportunity. The third pillar of this method is the development of a perception that transmutes crisis into opportunity, the alchemy of the strategic mind. Consider the great financial panic of 1907. While other titans of industry saw only collapse and ruin, frantically trying to save their own fortunes, Rockefeller saw a systemic weakness. His mind, trained by decades of this disciplined thinking, saw an opportunity not just for profit, but to restore order and stability to the entire financial system, thereby strengthening his own position immeasurably. Where others saw a fire, he saw a forge, an opportunity to reshape the very landscape. The daily practice of analyzing your assets and liabilities is a training program in strategic thinking. It hardwires your brain to constantly seek leverage. It forces you to ask the most potent questions. How can I apply my greatest asset to neutralize my most significant liability? How can I use a competitor's weakness to my advantage? How can this external problem be solved by deploying one of my unique internal resources? This is the thought process that uncovers hidden pathways to power. This pillar systematically transforms your thinking from reactive to proactive. The untrained mind's response to a problem is, "Oh no, this is a setback." The trained mind's response is, "Interesting, an unexpected variable has appeared. Where is the opportunity concealed within this event?" This perceptual shift is the difference between being a victim of circumstance and a master of strategy. It is the ability to see the gift inside every challenge, the potential profit inside every apparent loss. Rockefeller's genius was not in discovering oil. It was everywhere. His genius was in recognizing the colossal, systemic inefficiency and waste that plagued the entire industry. This waste, which his competitors viewed as a mere cost of doing business, he correctly identified as his single greatest opportunity. He did not need to invent a new product. He simply had to master the system that delivered it. His fortune was built upon an opportunity that was hidden in plain sight, visible only to a mind trained to see it. Ultimately, you must accept that luck, as most people understand it, does not exist. There is no cosmic force of chance that randomly bestows favor. What people call luck is merely the residue of design. It is the predictable outcome of a mind that is perpetually prepared, that sees the world with strategic clarity, and that has the discipline to act decisively when an opportunity reveals itself. The 90-second ritual is your daily process of designing your own luck, of becoming the architect of your own good fortune. The true power of this method is not found in its daily intensity, but in its relentless, compounding consistency. A single 90-second audit is a minor act, perhaps even trivial, but 1,000 consecutive days of this practice will forge a mind that is unrecognizable from its former self. It is the principle of compound interest applied not to capital, but to clarity, focus, and strategic power. The daily discipline is the small deposit that grows into an unimaginable fortune of wisdom. But perform the simple calculation. 90 seconds per day, practiced without fail, amounts to over 9 hours of pure, distilled, strategic thinking per year. This is the equivalent of locking yourself in a room with a board of elite advisors for more than a full business day, tasked with a single objective: the optimization of your life. It is an investment of time so small it is almost negligible, yet it yields a return so vast it is almost incalculable. It is the ultimate form of leverage. This daily act of alignment creates a virtuous cycle. Each day's clarity builds upon the last. The focus you cultivate on Monday makes Tuesday's audit even more precise. The emotional resilience you build on Tuesday allows you to see Wednesday's opportunities with greater clarity. Over time, this is not a linear progression. It is an exponential curve of personal effectiveness. Your capacity for clear thought and decisive action begins to compound at an astonishing rate. Imagine two individuals over the course of a single decade. One begins each day in reaction, immediately checking their phone, drowning in the urgent but unimportant agendas of others. The other begins each day with this 90-second ritual, aligning their mind before engaging the world. The gap between these two individuals after 10 years will not be merely a gap in income or status. It will be a chasm in wisdom, resilience, and personal sovereignty. They will exist in two entirely different realities. Over time, the habit ceases to be something you do and becomes part of who you are. You no longer need to force the audit. It becomes your natural mode of thinking. You become the kind of person who operates from a foundation of clarity, who meets chaos with composure, and who instinctively sees opportunity in every challenge. The practice does not just give you better thoughts, it transforms you into a better thinker. The discipline of the system becomes integrated into the fabric of your identity. The immense power that Rockefeller wielded at the height of his career was not the true source of his success. The true source was the mental operating system he began installing in his youth, one disciplined thought at a time. The financial empire was merely the final, visible result of the compound interest earned on a lifetime of 90-second daily deposits of pure, unadulterated clarity. The harvest was staggering because the seeding was consistent and unrelenting. The world Rockefeller inhabited was complex, but by our standards it moved at a glacial pace. Our world is exponentially faster, more interconnected, and more saturated with chaos. The demand on your attention is infinite. The potential for distraction is absolute. Therefore, the necessity for a grounding, clarifying ritual like the mental ledger has never been more acute. The principles are timeless, but their application in the 21st century is a matter of survival, not just advantage. We must adapt the framework to our modern context. The assets phase today must include a recognition of your digital resources, your network, your access to limitless information, the skills you can acquire on demand. These are force multipliers of immense power, but only if they are recognized and directed with intention. An unacknowledged asset is no different from a non-existent one. You must know what weapons are in your arsenal to wield them effectively. Likewise, we must update our understanding of liabilities. The modern liabilities are more insidious than those of the past. They are the subtle poisons of information overload, the addiction to digital validation, and the steady erosion of our capacity for deep, focused work. Identifying these silent drains on your mental capital during your 90-second audit is the essential first step toward neutralizing their corrosive influence and reclaiming your cognitive sovereignty. And what of the day's order? In a culture that glorifies the myth of multitasking, the act of selecting and committing to a single, primary objective is a revolutionary act. It is a declaration of rebellion against the cult of shallow busyness. It is your statement of profound intent against the overwhelming noise of the trivial. In the 21st century, defining your one thing is the ultimate competitive advantage, because it is the one thing almost no one else is willing to do. You may choose to supplement this mental ritual with a modern tool, a simple note-taking app, a private journal to log your day's order and review your progress. But never mistake the tool for the work itself. The essence of the practice must remain an act of pure, unmediated thought. The power is not in the recording of the insight. It is in the mental process of generating the insight in the first place. The technology can be a servant, but it must never become the master of the process. The technologies that define our age are fundamentally amplifiers. They amplify the intent and the mindset of the user. In the hands of a scattered, undisciplined mind, they are instruments of distraction and chaos, a pathway to mediocrity. But in the hands of a mind forged and sharpened by the daily discipline of the mental ledger, they become levers of unprecedented power tools for executing a clear and focused vision, at a scale Rockefeller himself could have scarcely imagined. This power is not offered freely. It carries a price. But the price is not one of money, nor does it require hours of grueling effort. The price is something far more demanding for the modern mind, a commitment to monotonous, non-negotiable consistency. It is the willingness to show up and perform this simple 90-second act every single day, without exception, regardless of your mood, your motivation, or the circumstances of your life. This is the toll that must be paid. You must come to understand the nature of true discipline. It is not motivation, which is a fleeting and unreliable emotion. Discipline is an unbreakable contract with your future self. It is the act of doing what you said you would do, long after the mood you set it in has passed. It is about fidelity to the system, not to your feelings. The system is what produces results. Your feelings are merely weather patterns, transient and irrelevant to the work at hand. Rockefeller did not treat his morning reflection as an optional self-help exercise. He treated it as the single most important strategic meeting of his day. It was more critical than any negotiation, more valuable than any business deal, because it was the foundational act that made success in all other endeavors possible. It was the sharpening of the axe before the chopping of the tree. He understood that preparation is the least visible but most critical component of all victory. Beware the seductive trap of casual self-improvement. This is not a life hack to be tried for a week and then discarded. It is not another item on a list of good ideas. It is an operating system to be installed at the deepest level of your being. It demands total commitment. To approach it half-heartedly is to guarantee failure. You must decide if you are merely interested in winning, or if you are willing to become the kind of person who is architected for victory. The final and greatest victory is not the wealth, the status, or the external achievements that this method can help you attain. The ultimate prize is self-mastery itself. It is the profound and quiet satisfaction of knowing that you are the master of your own mind, the sovereign of your internal state, in a world that is desperately trying to colonize your attention and dictate your thoughts. To own your own mind is the only form of ownership that can never be taken from you. In the end, you do not use this method to win. That is a subtle but profound misunderstanding. You commit to the daily practice of this method, and as an inevitable consequence, victory becomes your natural, default state. It is a fundamental re-engineering of cause and effect. You cease chasing success and instead embody the very conditions from which success cannot help but emerge. You become a cause, not an effect. Rockefeller's empire has, like all empires, turned to dust. His wealth has been scattered, his companies dismantled, but the mental architecture that built it all remains as timeless and as powerful as the laws of physics. The mental ledger is not a historical artifact. It is a living weapon waiting for a hand to wield it. Tomorrow morning, upon waking, you will be faced with 90 seconds. You can surrender them to chance, reacting to a day imposed upon you, or you can seize them, claim your sovereignty, and begin to build your own empire, starting in the silent kingdom of your mind. The choice defines everything. Commit to this ritual for 7 days, and share the shift you feel in your clarity in the comments below. And if you are serious about mastering the internal structures of excellence, subscribe, for our work here has only just begun.